Well, I guess I'm really going back to my roots with these tip episodes. This episode, I want to talk about some tips on how to read multiple books at once, because, let's be honest, there are so many books to be read and readers want to read, so the obvious answer is just juggle 2 or 3 books at once, but it's not as easy as it seems. You might forget characters in one book, the setting in another, or maybe even the entire plot of another. It happens. Sometimes you just focus too much of your attention in one book, and then the other one just disappears in your mind. I'm going to try my best to give some advice to help out with that, because sometimes while reading the required readings for school, I also tag along a book or two on the side for my personal reading, so I can still like reading. So I've had to keep up around three or 2 books at one time. It's your guess if I'm good at it, but I'll give what I have. I'll be sharing my top 3 tips just so this doesn't get super overwhelming, and honestly, I find it kind of simple, and these 3 tips help a lot. Without further ado, let's just get into the episode. Tip number 1, change the media you read with. Change it up, and by this I mean instead of reading 2 regular books, by that I mean like a paperback or a hardcover, try switch one to an audiobook and keep the other as just a normal novel. This really depends on how you take information and how you learn, but personally, changing the media helps a lot. We have this puzzle at our house that we do, and that's where I listen to my audiobooks. I just turn one on and listen away while doing something, or that puzzle. Of course, you could also do chores, laundry, or nothing while you listen, that too. Anytime else, I just read a paperback. It alternates because I'm taking in the information differently, and I'm able to remember what's happened in the book because I'm taking in the information differently. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but that's the gist. You can also add an ebook to the list, maybe all 3. Have an audiobook, ebook, and a regular book. That's multitasking at its peak. Tip number 2, set specific days for reading. I definitely use this tip when it comes to school. Okay, obviously it matters what the due date is or the complexity of the book, but anyway, this one is a little bit more intense and something I would really only recommend for school reads and personal reads, but you could do this in your day-to-day life. Choose what days of the week or even times of day to read one of the books and then alternate. Maybe it's every other day, you switch out, like Monday you read this book, Tuesday you read the other book, and then so on and so forth. Or maybe it's Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays I read this book, and then Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays I read this book. I'm not sure what you do on Sunday, but that was a very loose example of what you could do. It really helps, honestly, and might keep you very structured when it comes to reading books. I don't know. I definitely use it for school, so if you're in the same predicament as I was in, I would use this tip. Tip number 3, switch up the genres. This is very helpful. I recommend trying this one. If you're reading 2 or 3 fantasy books with their own magic systems and world and characters, most likely they're going to be scrambled up in your mind and hard to follow. So instead, maybe read a contemporary fantasy and maybe a poetry book, all at the same time. That is one combination. Because of the different genres, you're most likely going to be able to grasp a good understanding of what you're reading. I personally think that one of the most consuming genres, is that how would you put it? I don't know. Anyways, fantasy would be it. Most of the time, it's set in this epic world, or not, with a very specific magic system, etc., etc. Sometimes there's a lot of characters in fantasies. And maybe you just need to retreat into an easy read set in our world, which isn't nearly as fun, but you get what I mean. So you could switch to something like a romance or a contemporary. Most of the time, they don't have as many characters as a fantasy, but that's just most of the time. It could be the opposite. I don't know. I'm doing this right now with Ignite Me, the 3rd Shatter Me book by Tahar Mafi, and Beach Read by Emily Henry, which I'm listening to an audiobook. two very different genres that I can easily slip in and out of when I please. This one, along with tip number 1, are ones I highly recommend and the ones I personally use the most. Though this one might be a bit more accessible, as not everyone can get access to an audiobook and ebooks and stuff like that. But yes, do try this one if you have the chance. Alrighty, well that kind of wraps up our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I hope the tips were helpful. I might do some more tip episodes. It was really fun. And honestly, reading multiple books at one time is kind of difficult, but at the same time, it can be really easy once you master it. Anyways, I hope you have a great day and keep reading, folks. Bye-bye.